Hello. What if I told you that one of the most dramatic royal tensions of the year wasn't sparked by a scandal, a political debate, or even a family feud? At least, not in the way you'd expect. What if the spark came from a football legend and a sword? Before we unravel the emotional storm that left Prince William reportedly hurt and angry, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into stories that shake the palace walls and ripple across the world. Now, settle in, because this story reveals far more than headlines let on. It begins under the blazing Brazilian sun. Prince William, the future king, was thousands of miles away from home, dedicating his time and energy to the Earthshot Prize, his signature environmental mission. The cameras followed him from conference halls to conservation sites as he prepared to head to COP30, one of the most critical global summits of the decade. You might imagine this was the moment the world would rally behind him, the moment the royal family would align to give him the spotlight he needed. But fate, or perhaps something far more intentional, shifted the spotlight at the very moment he needed it most. Because while William fought for the planet, the nation's gaze swiveled elsewhere toward David Beckham, the man known for bending free kicks, breaking records, and capturing hearts. The world watched as Beckham, after more than a decade of persistent lobbying and quiet negotiations, finally received the knighthood he had long desired. The ceremony took place at Windsor Castle, the heart of royal tradition, where a simple tap of the king's sword transformed David Beckham OB into Sir David Beckham. Flashbulbs erupted. News outlets scrambled to cover every angle. Social media lit up with admiration, nostalgia, and celebration. It was a moment many believed Beckham had earned long ago. But for William, watching the frenzy unfold from across the Atlantic, the moment cut deep. According to one of the prince's close friends, the timing felt like a betrayal. Of all weeks, the friend confided to the royalist, this was the one week he needed the family to be pulling for him. Instead, it felt like they were pulling against him. He was left hurt and angry. Hurt and angry. Words not often used publicly about a man trained to maintain composure, duty, and grace. But the friend didn't stop there. They described the situation as sabotage, a word heavy with implication. The family sabotaged it from beginning to end, they said. It was pathetic, like the worst of bad old days. The bad old days, a phrase that conjures memories of palace rivalry, emotional strain, and the quiet wars fought behind the monarchy's golden facade. Days when unity was merely a glossy illusion. And then came a voice from inside the palace itself, a former courtier with sharp understanding of royal timing, protocol, and politics. Their words were even more damning. David Beckham had waited 15 years, the courtier said, and they had to do it this week? When you think of how gracious William had been, paying tribute to his father's work in his speech, it's a slap in the face. A phrase that slices through decorum and lands directly at the heart of father-son dynamics. The courtier then added something even more explosive. I'm afraid Charles still can't bear not to be the center of attention. If he couldn't be at COP30 himself, then nobody else was allowed to have the moment. It was an accusation that echoed through the narrative like a thunderclap, because beneath it lies a deeper question. Was the timing of Beckham's knighthood a coincidence or a calculated move? The UK honors system is not impulsive. Every knighthood, every award, every ceremony is crafted through layers of tradition, bureaucracy, and approval. Dates are chosen deliberately, with awareness of the public calendar, the political climate, and yes, even royal optics. So how likely was it that Beckham's knighthood, delayed for more than a decade, happened to fall on the very week Prince William was supposed to command global attention? Coincidence can only stretch so far before it snaps. Meanwhile, Beckham stood before the cameras, humbled and emotional. A young boy from the East End of London, he said, born in Leytonstone, and here at Windsor Castle, it's quite a moment. This is without doubt my proudest moment. His voice carried sincerity, nostalgia, and that unmistakable Beckham charm that has endeared him to millions. He spoke of his early life, his long career, and the philanthropic work he began when he was just 17. He talked about recognizing the power of his influence, not as a celebrity, but as someone respected globally. People listen to me, he said, because of the career I've had and the respect I've gained. He wasn't wrong. Beckham's influence is undeniable, and in that moment, standing with the king's honor resting on his shoulders, he shined in a way that few non-royals ever do, but shine too brightly near monarchy, and shadows begin to shift. For William, the emotional weight wasn't simply that Beckham received attention. It was that the royal family, consciously or not, handed him the spotlight during one of the prince's most critical moments on the world stage. William had been striving not just to represent the monarchy, but to redefine it through environmental leadership, global partnerships, and a mission that aimed to outlast him. Yet a footballer's knighthood, a moment 15 years in the making, overshadowed it all. What does that reveal about the monarchy's internal alignment, about the delicate balance between duty, ego, and timing, and most of all, it's about the future king's emotional world? This is where the story shifts from headlines into something more profound. Because behind the royal protocols and public statements lie very human feelings. Expectation, frustration, longing for support, and a quiet hope that family will stand behind you when it matters most. But for William, this was not that week. And as we peel back the layers of the story, a more pressing question emerges. If King Charles truly influenced or approved the timing, was it simply unfortunate? A struggle that, perhaps, runs deeper than anyone outside the palace walls truly knows. The moment Beckham's knighthood dominated the headlines, something invisible yet unmistakable shifted in the atmosphere around the monarchy. It was subtle, like the faint crack that appears on porcelain vase, barely noticeable at first, but revealing a deeper fragility within. And while the public celebrated Sir David, while newspapers splashed his smiling photos across their front pages, a very different scene was unfolding thousands of miles away. Picture William in Brazil, surrounded by environmental scientists, policy leaders, and activists. Every word he spoke, every pledge he made, was anchored in a mission bigger than royalty itself. He wasn't there for glamour. He wasn't there for applause. He was fighting for Earth's future. And yet, in quiet moments between meetings, as he glanced at the news cycle, he must have felt something twisting inside him. How could a global summit, one of the most consequential gatherings for the planet, be drowned out by a knighthood ceremony? But this story doesn't end with simple disappointment. It travels deeper, into the quiet corridors of royal psychology, where generations of expectation and rivalry have shaped the emotional blueprint of the Windsor men. William grew up watching his parents fight for their own place in the public imagination. He witnessed how attention could soothe or wound. He learned early than the royal world, spotlight isn't just light, it's power. And now, as a future king trying to find his era, he understands that image matters, that timing matters, that unity, especially within the family, matters even more. So when insiders claim he felt sabotaged, the word resonates not because of drama, but because it hits at the core of something personal. The belief that those closest to him should protect his moment, not eclipse it. Still, let's turn for a moment to Sir David Beckham himself. Because to truly understand the weight of this moment, you must step into his story too. Beckham's path to knighthood wasn't smooth or guaranteed. For more than a decade, he had been quietly knocking at the door of the honor system. His philanthropic work, his influence on sports culture, his ambassador roles, and his efforts in global charity campaigns were all part of a long, calculated journey. But there was also that infamous moment, the time he called the Honors Committee pushing for recognition, a move that raised eyebrows, a move that some said jeopardized his chances for years. And yet, he persisted. You could almost imagine him as a younger man, sitting in a modest London home, dreaming of wearing England's colors, dreaming of lifting trophies, and maybe one day being honored by the monarchy he admired so deeply. So when he finally stood in Windsor Castle, hearing the king's sword tap lightly against his shoulder, it wasn't just triumph. It was closure, redemption, a circle completed. But even moments of triumph cast shadows, and in this case, that shadow stretched all the way to Brazil. Those palace insiders, those whispers behind velvet curtains, those tense interpretations of timing, all point to a larger truth. The monarchy is not free from internal friction. It never has been. From Edward VIII's abdication to the tension between Queen Elizabeth and Margaret, from Charles and Diana's tragic marital war to Harry and Meghan's explosive departure, the Windsor family has always wrestled with visibility emotion, and influence. So when a former courtier suggested that Charles cannot bear not to be the center of attention, it echoed a familiar theme. Kingship is not just a role, it's an identity, one that can sometimes clash with the rising presence of the next generation. Perhaps Charles felt overshadowed by William's growing popularity. Perhaps he simply approved the timing, without considering the optics. Or perhaps this was one of those complex royal moments where no single person is entirely to blame, yet everyone feels a sting. And Beckham? In truth, Beckham didn't seem to desire conflict at all. He spoke as a man humbled by recognition, grateful for his journey. He talked about realizing that people listened to him, not because of fame, but because of respect. He acknowledged his responsibility, the weight of influence, the opportunity that comes with visibility. His words painted a man who sees himself not as a rival to royalty, but as a servant of the greater good, much like William himself. And yet, two paths collided, two forms of influence, two public icons, one born into legacy, the other crafted through sheer dedication, met at a crossroads neither had intended. So what does this moment truly reveal? It reveals that the monarchy is entering an era where the competition for public attention is fiercer than ever. Today's audiences gravitate toward authenticity, humility, emotional resonance, qualities Beckham has mastered over decades. William, in his role, carries the burden of tradition. He cannot be too emotional. He cannot be too outspoken. He cannot be too personal. But Beckham can, and that difference, subtle yet powerful, creates a tension the palace cannot ignore. And so the questions linger. If a football legend can overshadow a future king during one of the most important weeks of his career, what does that say about the monarchy's ability to maintain relevancy? If King Charles did play a role in the timing, what does that say about the balance of power between father and son? And if William truly felt unprotected, even undermined, what happens when a future king begins to doubt the unity of his own family? These are not merely royal curiosities. They are glimpses into the future shape of the British monarchy. As Beckham left Windsor Castle, smiling under grey English skies, the world applauded him. As William continued his mission in Brazil, cameras captured his dedication. But behind these images lies a tension that may resurface again and again, a reminder that royalty is not immune to human emotion, that even future kings can feel overshadowed. Then the grand theater of global influence, every light casts a shadow somewhere else. And perhaps, just perhaps, the world is beginning to see the monarchy not as a single shining institution, but as a collection of individuals navigating power, expectation, and identity under an unforgiving spotlight. In the end, maybe the real question isn't who deserved the spotlight, but what happens when the spotlight reveals more than anyone intended.